Alright, guys, welcome to my way too early World Cup predictions here. We're here. We're just going to go through game by game, predict the World Cup, and just come up with a winner. I'm going to end up doing another one of these later on once we get closer, but we'll get there. So, Group A is Mexico, South Korea, South Africa, and UEFA D. You can see here UEFA Path D is Denmark, North Macedonia, Czechia, Northern Ireland, or Republic of Ireland, sorry. Um, I expect, honestly, Denmark or Czechia to come out of this group. Denmark had a quite decent World Cup qualifying campaign, just to fall at the end to Scotland. But Mexico, South Africa, I expect Mexico to be buzzing here in game one, but I could see South Africa getting a goal because, I don't know, just feels like a game that they would get a goal. South Korea and one of the playoff teams. I think South Korea will end up winning this game. I think South Korea is a good side, and they've got some good players. But I do expect not five, the UEFA team, to take down South Africa. Exactly, yep. Negative one goal. Um, Take them down. Mexico, South Korea, I think it's going to be a good game. I'm going with 1-1. And then UEFA and Mexico, I'm also going to go with a 1-1 here. I think it being in Mexico, I think Mexico does have an advantage, but at the end of the day, I think they've been struggling since the Gold Cup, and I think that could very easily leak into this World Cup. So went through South Korea beating South Africa there. So then it's going to end up based on just, again, quick, easy predictions. Korea topping the group with Mexico second and UEFA on 4 points and that third spot. So then we go to Group B, Canada, UEFA A, which is Italy, Northern Ireland, Wales, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Qatar, and Switzerland. It's going to be a very interesting group, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a very tight game, World Cup and struggling World Cup for Canada. Their first game at home could be and should most likely end up being against Italy, so it's going to be a very tough one. But I think they're going to get a goal. I think they'll get the first goal of this match. Switzerland, Qatar. I think Switzerland wins this one pretty easy. I'm going to go with just a nice 2-0. And then Switzerland versus Italy. I expect Italy to end up winning it. Canada, Qatar. I think Canada gets their first ever win here against Qatar. And then I think they end up picking up a point against Switzerland. And then I think Italy will end up just taking down Qatar nice and easy in that final match of the group. So based on that, it would end up being Italy or just really whoever comes out. But I'm expecting it to be Italy, Switzerland, Canada, and Qatar to follow. And then Group C here, Brazil, Morocco, Haiti, Scotland. I think a lot of people are just writing Haiti off as just going to get killed. But I don't see that as my mouse got stuck. That's why it's at 11. I don't see that happening at all. I think it's going to be, I think they're going to cause some issues, especially for Scotland. And I think they do get a goal, but I do think Scotland's just good enough to take down Haiti. Haiti have been road warriors for years now. They've not played a home game the entire World Cup qualifying campaign. So just to get here is incredible. But yeah, I expect Morocco and Brazil to top this group. Quite easy, really, as 1-2. And like I showed there in that first game, Scotland taking down Haiti, I think gets Scotland. That's gives them a chance. They have to win that game to give them a chance, really, to end up getting through as a third place side. So based on that, Brazil, Morocco, and then Scotland, Haiti to finish out. Group D, very interesting one. Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, Kosovo as the UEFA team alongside the US, Paraguay, and Australia. I think the US is very good. I know a lot of people really sat there and was like, oh, it's going to be a walk in the park for the US. It's not a walk in the park, but it's definitely really pretty much best case scenario for the US. You're missing a lot of big teams. But it's no walk in the park like some people have been saying, that's for sure. If it does end up being Turkey, which I do kind of expect it to be, it'll make things a lot harder for the U.S. But I think they will somehow, it'll be a very cagey, close affair in this World Cup, but I really do think that the U.S. slash Turkey will end up topping this group, coming first and second here. So I'm going to go with this. I think Paraguay does take down the Aussies, the Socceroos at the end. So based on that, U.S. topping with UEFA C, pathway C, followed by Paraguay and Australia. And then over to Group E, Germany, Curacao, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. I think Germany, even though they've not been particularly thrashing in qualifying, I think that they go ahead and really just kind of take this World Cup and this group and really kind of walk it a good bit. I think Ecuador is somebody that cannot be overlooked. They've got a very good defense. Um, and then Ivory Coast have a lot of young players, young talent that's really doing well this year in club football. So it's going to be very interesting to see how really the battle for second place goes, in my opinion. Um, I think it'll be really interesting and tight, but yeah, I really do see it finishing like this: Germany topping with Ecuador, Ivory Coast, and Curacao to follow. And then Group F. Group F is actually a very intriguing group because right off the bat you'd think, okay, Netherlands is going to top it, but I think Japan honestly is going to end up topping this group, in my opinion. I very easily could see Japan winning that game against the Netherlands, first game of the World Cup at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. I've got Japan winning that one. They've got UEFA Path B, which is most likely going to end up being Ukraine, but if Sweden finally figures out how to play international football, they easily could get through. Poland, who's a good side as well, so it's definitely a intriguing prospect there to see who ends up coming through and um, getting out of this group. And I think it's a big toss up. I'm not extremely convinced by the Dutch. A lot of people are calling them dark horses. I don't think they're a dark horse, but it'll be very interesting, in my opinion, to see um, how this group pans out. But I got it like this: Japan, Netherlands, UEFA, and then Tunisia to bottom that group out. Group G, as much as I'm not a huge fan of this Belgian side, this is probably their best possible draw they could get. Egypt are not a great side other than Mo Salah, Omar Marmoush. Um, and then Iran, who's aging and really kind of sputtering, and then New Zealand, who's not that good of a side at all. Um, I think it'll be a very interesting group for second and third place, but I do see Belgium just kind of getting out of this group nice and easy. No real um, threat really for them at all. And so yeah, I'm gonna go with Belgium topping with Egypt in second, Iran in third, and New Zealand at the bottom. Spain, Group H, Spain, Cape Verde, Saudi Arabia, and Uruguay. Again, another intriguing group. First, second, I feel like it's gonna be quite easy for Spain and Uruguay, but that match between the two of them will be very, very intriguing to see how they do and who tops this group, really, in my opinion. But I'm going to go with this. I think Spain does end up taking it, really, in my opinion. Cape Verde is a solid team, and they've been on the cusp of a World Cup berth, and they finally got it this year. But I just think that Spain and Uruguay are just way too good and will end up taking it and walking throughout out this group quite easy. So I got Cape Verde, Saudi Arabia as the bottom two, with Spain and Uruguay getting through automatically. Group I, this is my group of death, in my opinion, which is most likely going to end up being Iraq to finish out this group. But you got France, Senegal, Norway. Iraq is a kind of a stingy team. It's an interesting one, but the other three, France, Senegal, and Norway, are very, very good teams, and it's going to be a very interesting group, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of goals scored here potentially, and I think it'll just be I think it'll be a fun, very fun, interesting group to watch. But I'm going to go with this as my predictions. Really, France topping with Norway second, Senegal third. I keep going back and forth with Senegal, Norway. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna go with it as this. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with it like that. I think it's just gonna be a very interesting one in my opinion. Um, yeah, it's gonna be very, very, very much of a toss up in that one. It's just really who scores the most goals, and I think France and Norway will score more than Senegal in that case. Group J: Argentina, Algeria, Austria, Jordan. Um, it's an interesting one because Austria and Algeria are not bad sides. Jordan as well. They're not a bad side, but they're also not fantastic. They're just kind of middle of the pack. Austria, first World Cup in a long time. Jordan's debutante. And Algeria, who's a solid side but is starting to age a bit. It's very, very much an interesting one. But I think Argentina do end up are gonna end up topping this group. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think Jordan Algeria. I think that game will be a very good one. And I think Austria Jordan will also be a very good one as well. Um, But I've got Argentina topping with Austria second, Algeria third, Jordan at the bottom, closing out this group. Group K: Portugal, Uzbekistan, Colombia, and I see one which is most likely going to end up being DR Congo. DR Congo is a good side. They've got a lot of good players, a good bit of young players, as well as a good bit of experience. We'll go through, and I actually am making and finishing up a list where I could go through every single team and have one guy to watch. A couple of them I mentioned a second player. DR Congo is one of them that I mentioned a couple different players because they are very interesting mix of experience and youth, and I think they get through this World Cup. And I think they rattle a few feathers, and I think a lot of people expect Portugal really to come out of this group top and clean skate, but I don't think so. I think they get through this first game against DR Congo, but I don't think it's going to be as clean as some will say. I think Colombia do walk that Uzbekistan game pretty easy, comfortable 2-0 win. I think Portugal end up kind of comfortable against Uzbekistan. And again, I think Colombia um, get past that one. But I actually am going to say I really do think that Colombia is a serious, serious threat to shake the tree of the favorites. And I think it starts here in the group stage. June 27th, Hard Rock Stadium in Miami against Portugal. I think it'll start there. And I do think Uzbekistan will finish out with 0 points, but I got Colombia topping with Portugal second, DR Congo third, and Uzbekistan final. And then final group of the group stage, Group L: England, Croatia, Ghana, Panama. Panama are probably a better side than they were their first World Cup in 2018, Russia. But they had England in there as well. I don't think that they're going to really be able to compete with England, even though I do think England is a little bit overrated. Um, I think it's just going to be way too tough for Panama and Ghana to really compete with England in this group. But I do think Ghana's not a bad side. They're just working their way. They're essentially rebuilding the national team and reshaping, redefining it to make sure that they can go ahead and continuously, consistently compete at the top, which they've failed to do as of late. Um, but yeah, I think I'm going to have another 5-0 win for England over Panama. And then I think this Croatia Ghana game will be a good one, but will not see too much else. I think kind of what you expect: England, Croatia, Ghana, Panama in that order. But then we go ahead, we move on to the knockout stage here. So, based on how I just had things kind of marked, Germany and UEFA D. In this one, I think Germany does go ahead. They get through um, that one relatively easy. Um, and then France, Paraguay. I think France do end up getting through this one. I think Paraguay's not a bad side, um, and they've got some very good youngsters. But I think it'll be very interesting and very tough for them to really cause any real issues with France. I think Mexico and Switzerland will bow out, or Mexico Switzerland will be a close game. I'm gonna have Mexico going through on pens. I think that'll be our first pens game of the World Cup. Maybe it might be their first. I don't know when the games are. I think that'll be the first game. Japan Morocco. I actually think Morocco will fall here. I think it's going to be they're going to have a lot of pressure to try and repeat from the last World Cup, and I think they'll fall here. And I think Japan's a very good side, and I like Japan honestly over Morocco. Portugal, Croatia. I'm going to go with Portugal. Again, I'm not super high on Portugal, but I know Croatia is not quite yet ready again with their new crop of youngsters to go back, try and get back to that semifinal stage. And I think Portugal's got a lot more players in their prime and will go ahead and win that one. And I think Spain take down Austria quite comfortably. And a very interesting one here, U.S. Canada. Um, yeah, I think it's just going to be a very very interesting game. But it'll be in the U.S. and I think the U.S. will take it. And I can't even see who this is. This game's going to be in Vancouver. I think this game will be in the. This game will be in. That game would end up being in Toronto. Interesting, but either way, um, that's the Belgium game. Belgium, Senegal. I think honestly, I'm gonna go with Senegal taking out Belgium. Again, I'm not high on Belgium at all. I think they've got a lot of defensive issues and a lot of issues going forward as well. Um, if Lukaku hasn't really been fit all year, and they've just been inconsistent, especially with strikers. So I'll go with that, and then over to the other side of the round of 32, Brazil, Netherlands. Um, I'm not honestly as confident in Brazil this year either. You got Richarlison leading the line. How much can you rely on him? But I do think that I think they're better than the Netherlands. And then Norway, Ecuador. Again, they're just going to score goals. Even though Ecuador is a very good defensive side, I think Norway will just have too much going forward for them. South Korea and Ivory Coast is another one that I think will be a very interesting game. You see that in round 32. A lot of people probably overlook it, but I think it'll actually be a really fun game to watch. Both sides will absolutely gun it, and I think it'll be really interesting and really fun. But I think I'm going to go with South Korea. They had a great World Cup qualifying campaign and have really supplemented the squad with a lot of depth in this past cycle. England versus what would end up being DR Congo. I think England will end up kind of comfortably taking that one. And then all South American affair, Argentina, Uruguay. I think Argentina is just good. It's going to be a great game. These two have some great games in World Cup qualifying, but yeah, I think they're too good. UEFA C and Egypt. UEFA C. Yeah, I think this is. I mean, this is the Turkey Egypt. And I think UEFA is just better. Turkey is just a better side. UEFA A now against Iran. Again, they're just better. Iran's just squeaking in as a third place team, and I just don't think that they're good enough at that point. Colombia, Ghana. Again, I'm very high on Colombia, and I expect them to go ahead and stroll through to that next round. Send off to the round of 16. Germany, France, a first major game here of the knockout stage, really. Um, I think France is just too good. Um, I just have not been convinced by Germany. They haven't looked thrilling, but they've just kind of got the job done in World Cup qualifying. And I just worry about Germany's depth, especially in defense. And I think France is just a little too good. Mexico and Japan. This game is going to be in Houston, so there's going to be a lot of Mexico fans there. But again, I think it'll be very close. But I do expect Japan to take it and make it to the quarterfinals once again for the first time in a few years. Portugal Spain, another heavy hitting clash here, and I expect Spain to take this one a lot easier than really some think. Now, it's hard to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, U.S., U.S., U.S." I'm not going to. I really like Senegal. If it comes down to this, it's going to be really interesting if this were to happen because U.S. and Senegal play in May in Charlotte as a warm up to the World Cup. So it'll be very interesting at that point because you figure Paraguay and Australia, U.S. just played them in friendlies, and then if they would end up playing against Senegal, they also played Belgium. So either way, if they end up with that kind of side, they're going to end up playing Senegal and Belgium leading up to the World Cup as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how they approach those games and if it happens in the knockout stage, what goes on from there. Now, Brazil, Norway, it's a very interesting game, if I'm being honest. And I think it's going to be pens. And I just think if it gets the pens, really the best goalie, the better players, individual players. And I think Brazil just has enough to get through on pens against Norway there, get through the quarterfinals. England and South Korea, I think England, again, I've been saying that England and Brazil are not some super team. I think they're both overrated a little bit coming to this World Cup, but at the same time, it's hard to not pick them based on how these games have played out here. So what I said, Argentina and UEFA C again, Turkey. I think will be a tough game for Argentina, but I do think that they will go ahead and get through. And then UEFA A, which should be Italy, I do believe, and Colombia. I'm going the Colombians. I'm really high on them. I keep saying over and over again. I've got Colombia once again. France, Japan. I think this is where Japan's Cinderella run ends, and I also think it's where Senegal's run ends as well. Both 3-0 games set up a very tasty, mouth-watering affair in that semifinal. And then you got Brazil, England, Argentina, Colombia, and I'm going to go with Argentina taking down Colombia again. I think it's going to be a very, very close game, and I'm going to go with pens. But Argentina got that World Cup Premier League experience, or not Premier League, World Cup penalty kick experience, and Emi Martinez, and I think they take it. And then I think Brazil just notch England over the line. And then I'm going to go with a Spain win. We're here at the semifinals. I think Spain takes down France. France is a very good side, but I think Spain's just a little bit better this year. And then I'm also going to go with Argentina to take down Brazil. So third place game is going to be France and Brazil, and I think France will take that. And I think Spain is going to end up being our World Cup champions. I think it's going to be tough for Argentina to repeat, and really it's just going to come down to where the teams fall and how they come through. I mean, it's so important. You can see, on that bottom left where the U.S. is, it's a very tough kind of grouping to get out of, whereas England, just to get to the quarterfinals here, they had to take down DR Congo and South Korea. So it all just depends on really where you end up at when it comes to this knockout stage. It's very, very intriguing, very interesting. So much is going to happen. You figure the last World Cup, Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia in the first game, and that just shook everything up. So one bad result, one good result, and it doesn't even have to be in your group or your teams. It can just be anywhere, and your entire fate of the World Cup and how far you go can change. It's very interesting. You figure Spain, instead of coming first, come second. All of a sudden, they end up in the same quadrant as another powerhouse country. One of those top 4 seeds that were kept apart in the World Cup. So it's very interesting prospect here, but I've got Spain as my way too early, very little initial research, and squads aren't released, and there's still so much time for injuries to happen and everything. We don't even have the playoff teams decided yet. So this is what I'm going for. I've got Spain taking out Argentina in the final, with France coming third over Brazil. But let me know what you guys think. Who is going to be your champions? And if let me know if you're going to any games. I applied to get some more tickets. Try to apply to get tickets in general. So we'll see if I get anything. But let me know if you're going to any games and who is your World Cup champion. And if you think somebody shockingly is going to go to the quarterfinals or semifinals, maybe you guys have Argentina over Colombia. Maybe you have South Korea over England. Who knows? But let me know what you guys think will happen. And make sure you guys stay tuned. Like I said before, I'm going to have 1 or 2 players to watch from every single country in this World Cup, as well as every single country in the playoffs. So it'll be a couple different videos. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you guys can go ahead and see those when they are released. And thank you guys so much for watching.